Welcome back to The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Faria. Joining me on the program next is former president of Guyana, Donald Ramotor. He's joining me to take a look at the challenges and the opportunities that is before CARICOM right now, ahead of the handover, ahead of the 47th Heads of Government Conference, which is going to be taking place in St. George's later this month. Now, the conference had to be postponed because of the passage of Hurricane Beryl, making a direct hit on Carriacou and the Petit Martinique, and throwing Grenada into relief and recovery mode because of those two islands. Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell is the new chairman of CARICOM. The handover did not happen with the pomp and ceremony that it usually does because the hurricane came in just about 2 or 3 days before the conference was scheduled to take place to open at the St. George's University in Trublu in Grenada. But we're going to be taking a look at some of the issues that are expected to be on CARICOM's plate when they meet, with special focus on climate change and food security because of what has developed over the last week and a half or so with Beryl threatening food security and threatening countries' ability to meet the target of a 25 by 25, which is reducing food import by 25% by 2025. And we also know that the region continues to make the case for climate justice. A hurricane season that is said to will be more active than normal, bigger storms, more storms coming as a result of climate change that the region says is being caused by countries that are not taking sufficient responsibility in helping to mitigate against the impact of those issues. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you once again.
It's good to have you on. A lot has happened since you and I spoke to schedule this interview. Quite a bit has happened to St. Vincent and Grenada with the passage of Hurricane Beryl. Have you been following?
Yes, I was out of the country. I wasn't following as closely as I should have because of some communication problems, but I generally have a grasp of the devastation that took place in particularly Petit Martinique and Carriacou. And then the St. Vincent I heard too was badly damaged. Um, Yes, I'm trying my best to catch up. But since I came back home yesterday, I'm trying to catch up on all the news that has been happening.
And with this CARICOM scheduled to meet later this month, this is one of the issues that will, if it was second or third on their list, will probably become first on their list. As a former uh, leader in CARICOM, what do you expect they will be talking about during the upcoming conference in light of what has just happened?
I suspect that they will be consumed with a lot of the discussion on the immediate problems that exist, and that is probably natural because of the suffering of the people who have been affected by this devastating storm that occurred in the Caribbean. But and I think they will also be looking at how to look into the future about what should be done. I think they probably have to have immediate issues to deal with the problems they have right away, and a medium term issue because you realize that this is the beginning of the hurricane season, and this devastation has occurred in the region so early. So I believe that the sensible thing for them to do would be to also start discussing measures that should be um, taken into consideration that the hurricane season has just started, and what measures should be taken, what responses should happen should another hurricane come through the region again and do some of the damages. And then long term, I think we have to have a long term plan for the region about how do we where I think we should have a common fund, a common maybe storage of things that we can have very quick response to nullify some of these issues. Apart from that, there are many other issues that is linked. Sometimes it's very obvious, and sometimes it's not so obvious. Some of the matters that we know about climate change is directly linked, and that is very obvious. Everybody now understands this. Um, that climate change is responsible for all of these big issues, all of these ferocious storms and heat waves, and it is now affecting all different parts of the world. And therefore, I think, well, CARICOM has already been taking this matter very seriously, and it needs to be taken up with more vigor in the international arena, where, because of the fact that it has been mentioned over and over again that we are probably among the least culprits in causing climate change, because we emit our emission of the gases that the greenhouse gases that cause climate change is very small, and most of this is coming from outside. That we are paying for the rapid development, the industrialization in some of the developed world, and the kind of emission that they happen under them. So I think those are issues we have to look at. But there are other issues, because we talk only about jobs and factories and industries that emit um, greenhouse gases. But what about wars? The wars are causing. What about the blowing up of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that has released more greenhouse gases than any other single incident that has ever occurred in the history of our world? What about the
Mm.
war in Gaza that is sending millions of tons of dust into the atmosphere, and the war in the Ukraine? So I think that we in the region, while we are far away from from what is happening in these places, we have to pay more attention, because these things are having direct impact on our well-being in the region.
Now, President, do you think that will Beryl coming so early in the season, such a strong hurricane, that system has acted strangely from the beginning? It is going to be one that goes down in the history books. She's going to be recorded because of the way she's formed and the way she's behaved. Do you think this makes a stronger case, this moment in time makes a much stronger case for CARICOM as it engages those who are expected to take responsibility for climate change?
Yes, it does make a very, very strong case for that. As I just mentioned, that we are the least emitters of the greenhouse gases that is causing climate change to occur, but we are affected tremendously. And the sad thing about it is the poor who suffer the most when these things happen. The very vulnerable people are the ones that suffer um, quite a lot when we have these natural disasters occurring. I don't know if we can continue to just call them natural disasters when we are already convinced that a lot of these activities are as a result of our human activities on the planet. That we are probably accelerating some of the what used to be natural, but it's becoming quite unnatural for these things to be happening as we see now, and that is largely because of the activity of human beings on the planet.
And food security is also threatened. I spoke in the introduction about the 25 by 25 target that had been set. Your country, Guyana, leads CARICOM on agriculture, and that was expected to be achieved by next year. Now, in the case of Grenada, the Prime Minister saying that our move towards meeting the 25 by 25 has been set back by at least 7 years. St. Vincent as well, a big agriculture producer. If you were advising CARICOM, if you were part of the meeting that's coming up and you're advising them, what would you say about how we approach the issue of food security in light of the challenges that we face and this major setback that two countries have faced in the grouping. Well, three countries, because Jamaica has had a lot of impact on the agriculture as well.
Yeah, I think I if you look at the history of our community, you will see that our agriculture was normally geared to satisfy international market. Sugar was the main. At one time, you had cotton, and now sugar were the big crops that were produce, but really we were producing that fundamentally for the international market. I think we have to do both things. We can't ignore the international market because it's very important to our economic development and so. But we should also look at the food that we consume to produce more of the food that we consume in our society because a lot of the food that we consume are not being produced in a very economical way. Most of it is being done in pretty small scale, and I think we have to probably change that and produce more of the stuff that we use every day in our society and not to import, because you know that one of the concerns that CARICOM has been speaking about for a while now is the heavy importation bill for food that we have. I believe it's probably one of the biggest importation bill that we have in the region is for
It's food.
food and energy, and therefore why should we, when we have the capacity, even the smaller islands got I believe they got capacity to produce in some great amount, some amount of the food that we consume, and we should concentrate heavy on that. While I'm not saying that we should ignore the commercial crops that we produce for export. That too is important, but we should be focusing on our consumption patterns. We should also have a massive education program to have the region people beginning to consume more of what we produce, but we have to produce them first to get the people to.
But one of the challenges that the region faces, and you made the point that we import so much. We import energy, high import there. So a lot of the inputs for agriculture are imported, making it almost prohibitive in some cases to produce at a level that can even meet that 25 by 25 target. So we also have to look at the cost of inputs as well. We're hardly producing anything in the region.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. You're right about that. I mean, let's take Guyana. I mean, of course, it's still early days in Guyana here that we are now become an oil producing country, but that's pretty recent. But we should be together with Trinidad and other places that produce oil. We should be concentrating on more fertilizer to have it. That's a byproduct from the oil industry to get it. But when we don't do any kind of refining here or any kind of processing it, like in Guyana, with at least we have not started as yet to do any kind of value added to the oil that is produced here. Every drop is exported and produced and processed outside, and then we re-import back not only the fuel but the byproducts, the greases, the oils, the lubricants, the fertilizer for agriculture, and so forth. So I think that we have to look at all of these things. Why are we not producing more of these things ourselves? I know Trinidad had gone somewhere in producing grease and lubricants and so forth, and fertilizer, but that's the direction that Guyana should be going to, and either try to attract investment in those areas to add value, or the state should consider very strongly doing it itself if we're not getting the investment from outside.
Mm.
Because this is not only a question of, I mean, some people talk about we're looking at the feasibility and this and that, but we have a region, we have a market, we have a sizable market in the region that can sustain some of these things, and we should seriously consider if we're not getting the investment from outside to do it, then we should do it ourselves, either individually as a country or pooling together as one of a CARICOM project we should have. We had all kind of plans and ideas that really never materialized. I don't know if you remember one time we were talking about Guyana and Jamaica bauxite going into Trinidad to be smelt with the cheap energy in Trinidad. All of those things we have, and we do, some of the conditions still exist that we can do these things as CARICOM projects. We should start beginning to think now about what projects CARICOM can have and looking at our different resources and how we can add value to what we produce in our society.
Because we have this common dream. We talk about the CARICOM single market and economy, and a lot of plans have been made at each of these heads of government conferences. But
Mhm.
when we look at the region 50 years later, we're still having these kinds of conversations. I mean, the Grandance Declaration of 1989 that was signed here, and it was so hopeful in July of 1989. It was so hopeful in terms of the region getting things done collectively and fast tracking the development of the region as a group. But we
Mhm.
still, why are we still unable to jump forward faster and in bigger steps in the
I,
region, despite our noble and high ideals and ideas?
I really don't know if I have all the answers for that. I will just probably speculate and I hope that this make a contribution to a broader discussion by other people and so forth. But I suspect that some of it has to do with the fact that we are we are, in the terms of history, we are very recent independent countries, and some areas we still want to exercise that total kind of freedom to act that we want. But I think that time is catching up with us. I think we need to really look at what are projects that can be regional projects. I think once we start to have things common to all of us, or more things common to us where we have common projects. Like I said, the one idea years ago. This is not a new idea. This is an idea um, way back in the 70s and 80s, talking about smelting our bauxite into aluminum instead of us exporting. We still export every ounce of our bauxite. We don't produce anything beyond the ore itself. In Guyana in the 1960s, we were producing alumina, which is a process before aluminum. But even that has been closed down at this point in time. And and we are not adding value to our products. And that is where I think we have to try to put our attention to what are the joint projects that we can get into, invest in, that could be CARICOM projects and named CARICOM projects, seen it to be CARICOM project. And that will eventually help us once we start get the political will to start doing those things jointly. I think it will have an effect that can multiply a multiplier effect, that we can have more and more projects in that direction. But we have to start to make a move somewhere, and food security is one clear area where we should, because we see how much resources are it's pumped out of this region to import things that we can practically produce in many ways.
And of course it comes with the issues of inflation as well. Once you're importing, you
Yes, yes, and
now
in fact, right now, the inflation in the region are all imported inflation because of the problems that are happening in the Middle East. The cost of bringing a container, at least speaking from Guyana, which I'm sure is for the rest same for the rest of the region. The cost of bringing a 40-foot container from China used to be 3,000 US dollars. Now it's 20,000 US dollars, and prices are actually going up. So we need to really start thinking about acting together. We have possibilities. All of our countries got ports. We could build deep water ports. We can look at our communication. Some of the things that we were thinking about is going in the right direction. I don't know how far some of these projects have gone. We were thinking about a ferry in within the region itself that can help to move food and people in a cheaper way in the area, and that I think is one of the things in the right direction that we can do. And we have very good farmers. We have very good farmers in Guyana. I know Jamaica has extremely good farmers. Um, um,
Grenada has
Trinidad
extremely good
Trinidad has
farmers.
extremely good farmers. They produce very good stuff.
You
I
know,
was in
as
England. I was in England the other day, and I stopped at a shop that was selling chocolates, and all of the cocoa was coming from Grenada. I was
as it
told.
should. We have the best. Unfortunately, the cocoa trees took quite a hit in Beryl. Before I let you go, because we're just about wrapping up quickly, I just
Yeah.
want you to weigh in on the situation in Gaza with Pakistan. A number of CARICOM countries, including Trinidad, had come forward to recognize Palestine as the state of Palestine. How important is this that the number of countries have been increasing in the region who are recognizing the state of Palestine? What sort of statement is the Caribbean making with this move?
I I think it's very, very important. That is very important because what has taken place for the last 9 months in the Gaza is a total genocide. Although there are figures about the amount of people who are dead, about 38, 39,000 people they claim are confirmed dead. But I just saw a figure where 21,000 children are missing. That's only children. And most likely they are dead under the rubble because the people have no way of getting everybody out and in the mountains of stuff that are there. They're killing, the killing is very important. And if we recognize that the solution has to be a democratic solution, it cannot, in my view, the United States is not uh, in a position to be the the to help to bring peace together because they have taken a side with Israel. They are the ones that are providing the bombs that are killing the people in Palestine. They are the ones that are defending Israel whenever Israel comes under threat from Hezbollah. They're going there to try to deal with these issues and so forth. So the United Nations has to step forward, and the CARICOM should raise their voices in that they have. I have not heard one single CARICOM leader making the point that the United States is not a fair arbiter in this situation as it stands now. And then they are also saying that they're speaking about the day after and saying that Hamas must be part of any solution. But it's the people of the Gaza and the people of Palestine who should decide that, not us outside of there. And those are things I think CARICOM, with a tradition of democracy, fighting for democracy and the role carried in helping to preserve democracy in Guyana and so forth, we should extend that to internationally to say that this should be a position for the people of Palestine themselves. And the other thing I think that they can do, but again, it calls for political will. Um, I think the CARICOM as a whole should break relationship with Israel. That will be a substantial contribution equivalent to what South Africa has done in making a contribution to bringing peace to the Middle East and bringing an end to the suffering of the Palestinian people. If CARICOM, the countries of CARICOM collectively announce breaking diplomatic relations with Israel because of their genocidal activity, I would even say the fascist type of activity that has taken place there, that can create a tremendous movement throughout the world and force Israel to do that. Imagine we had practically been that close in South Africa to expel South Africa from the United Nations. In fact, they didn't expel them completely, but they were suspended during the time of apartheid. Why can't we do that with Israel at this point in time?
Understand.
Which is doing
President former President Ramator, we are out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining me on the narrative. And don't be a stranger. I'd love to have you back to speak on a bit
I'd love to
more
be
on
back to talk about
international
the
affairs.
connection of what is happening with our hurricanes, climate change, and the wars that are taking place all over the world. Then we should take a stand on those things too.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, bye. Thanks for having me.
This is The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Farrier.